Good afternoon. My name is Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator for the Osterville Village Library. Thank you so much for being here today. And to our friends on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us as well. Today, we have the pleasure of having with us local author Dan Perdios to introduce his new book, Rescuing Morgan, Love is Just the Beginning, the story of an abused golden retriever puppy and his forever dad, in which love was just the beginning of their complex redemptive relationship. Dan is an extensively published Penn Grant Award-winning journalist. His articles have appeared in magazines and newspapers such as We the People, the Press Democrat, the Bay Area Reporter, the Russian River Times, the Desert Times, an LA Magazine, and the Desert Sun. So without further ado, Dan Perdios.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. Good afternoon to all the folks out in Zoom land as well, and anyone who's going to see this as a recording. Thank you to the Osterville Library, and especially to Amy Wolf, who held my hand organizing this book event. I'd never done a slide presentation. When I was last here two years ago, we screened our film, Wild About Harry. And afterwards, I sold my book, Golden Retriever and His Two Dads, An Adventure on Cape Cod, which was inspired by the film. So this event is a little different. Also, $4 for every book we sell today will be donated to the MSCPA over in Centerville. Rescuing Morgan is a true story about an abused golden retriever and his forever dad, me, in which love is just the beginning. It's a bi-coastal story and opens with our family in the grips of sadness at the loss of Willie, the blonde golden hair. We're boarding the plane to Cape Cod to visit my family, who has a home in Centerville. The story takes place during the Great Recession in 2008, when foreclosures were widespread and people were abandoning dogs, golden retrievers as well. I know it's difficult to imagine that a golden retriever could be abused and or abandoned, but the reality is that any breed can find themselves in trouble. I had never rescued a dog before, but friends of mine had, and they seemed happy with their new furry adoptees. I figured, what could go wrong? This would not be my first dog. I had already raised two of them, Nicholas and Willie, from when they were puppies. So while this Great Recession is going on, and people were forced to abandon their pets, I decided that it was time for me to pay back to the golden breed for all the things they had done for me. They saved my life. They rescued me in a dark time. Now it's time for me to rescue one of them. Many of us believe that our companions have rescued us. It might be from an end of a relationship, could be an illness, or some kind of abuse. My rescuers saved me in the darkest years of the AIDS epidemic. My partner had passed away and my emotional health was in disarray. Then my physical health began to deteriorate. Even after all this time, all these many years, I still believe with my whole heart and my mind that I wouldn't have survived without Nicholas and Willie's loyalty and devotion to me. Let's look at them again. Those two guys. No matter how painful, no matter how scary my life got, and it was bleak, every day, every single day, I had some joy in my life. I had a companion. That's something that a lot of people didn't have. So I found the golden that I wanted to rescue in LA. He was turned into the shelter for biting the owner. We named him Morgan after Captain Morgan of rum fame. He was my first rescue. He was 1 year old. He'd been sick. He'd been abused. He was anxious and aggressive. And you could see him. You could see here. He just isn't a 1 year old golden. There's something, he's not happy. And oddly enough, when we brought him home, he was afraid to go upstairs. I mean, what 1 year old puppy dog is afraid to go upstairs? So something must have happened to him that the rescue group didn't know, and we certainly didn't know. But I'm a love will conquer all kind of guy. I figured with enough love, Morgan would behave. With enough positive feedback and some basic training, he'd stop fighting and attacking other dogs. After all, I had trained my first two dogs with the San Francisco SPCA. I knew the commands, but boy, was I wrong. If only love was the solution, Morgan would have already been a good, well-behaved companion. I was discovering firsthand that an abused animal needs time to heal. I learned I had to be patient. I was completely exasperated as to what to do, especially after he bit James and then me. A friend recommended a private trainer in LA. She said she had done it, it only cost a couple $100 an hour. Well, you know, in my mind, I could see the dollar bills just floating up, 1 hour, 2 hours, and the money just kept adding up. So, I thought private trainers were for people with, one name, Oprah, Cher, Ellen. But I had no place else to turn. So I hired a famous dog whisperer, who I later learned had actually trained the dogs of one of the previous mentioned celebrities. Can you guess who it was? Guess, shout out one of the, Oprah, no?
Madonna.
It was Ellen. Really, this guy trained Ellen's dogs. But the joke is, it turns out that the dog whisperer's whisper was not loud enough for our new rescued boy, Morgan. It just didn't get through. So now what could I do? It was clear that I needed help because he needed help. Kind of help that I wasn't able to provide. Clearly, I wasn't able to, even with all my experience in raising dogs. And I refused to use an electric collar. I felt that Morgan had been abused enough already. So another friend recommended a police officer named Dan Lemaster. He trained the police dogs for all of Riverside County out in Palm Springs. And he claims that that was his real name, Dan Lemaster. So I went to Lemaster's class, taught at the police station, thinking he'd train Morgan. I thought, great, Morgan's gonna get trained. Wrong. Guess who was the one getting trained? Me. That first night, Morgan tried attacking other dogs, and I shouted, no. And again, a little louder, I said, no. And then a third time, I was like, no. I was really frustrated and embarrassed a little bit. And suddenly I heard somebody shouting from behind me, "Which no is that dog supposed to obey?" And I turned around, wondering where that shout came from, until I saw this guy stomping toward me. I mean, really stomping. It was like going like this, and I knew I was in trouble. So, "Which dog is that? No, is that dog supposed to obey?" he shouted to me. "He came this way," I said kind of sheepishly, like, "Yeah, don't yell at me. He came this way." He reached out and said, "May I?" And I happily handed him the leash. When Morgan lunged at another dog, the master went boom. He just like went boom. And Morgan flew in the air and landed on his butt, but only for a moment. And then he was up again, lunging at another dog. And the master just went like this, boom. And he kind of sailed backwards and landed on his butt. But this time, he sat there sort of stunned. The master turned and said to me, "He won't be lunging at any more dogs. And if he does, that's what I want you to do. You're in charge, not the dog." He handed me the leash and stepped away, and then turned around and said, "And next week you're to have a 6-foot leash." Exclamation point. Now I was the one who was stunned. Ordinarily, I would never let anyone, treat my dog like that in this manner. But the master was right about one thing. Morgan stopped lunging at other dogs. For the next 12 weeks, it never happened again. So that's how it went. Every week, the master was on my case and in my face the entire time. One week he shouted, "Are you going to do that every time you want that dog to go down?" Yeah. On another night, when Morgan got a little bit ahead of me, he stomped over again and shouted, "Why is that golden retriever ahead of you? If you were more consistent with your commands, that dog would obey you all the time." Well, for 12 weeks it went like this. But I realized that I was being used as the guinea pig. I was the only one he yelled at, just me. So I knew he was just using me as a tool for everybody else. And, I wasn't always happy about it, but I decided not to take it personal. And the class was working. Morgan and I were bonding. And that was the important thing. I could tell that he liked coming to the class. When we first arrived at the field, I'd let him sniff around a bit before we went right into the training mode. He was like an athlete, ready to practice. After class, he'd jump up into the truck and sit on his side, on the passenger side, and he'd have this smile. You know how they can smile. It seemed like he was thinking, how do you like being scolded and yelled at? And I just, it would make me chuckle, really. When he got home, he'd jump out, race into the house, and sit by the kitchen, ready for dinner. One night after class, we were driving home. It wasn't very far, just a couple of miles. Morgan reached over to me and put his paw on my shoulder. And I knew then, I just knew that this class was working. Him and I were bonding on a deep level. And I had to learn to take command. I became the alpha dog. I was in charge, not Morgan. With this understanding, there was a definite shift in our relationship, and we began to make progress. Now, there's a lot of funny scenes and touching scenes in the book. One involves a tennis ball. Another one involves some hopping antics that he did. But I'm not gonna tell you everything. I can't tell you everything. I'm gonna leave the book for you to tell you all of these other stories. So let's go on. Here we are. This is the first weekend that we brought Morgan home. And you know, even here, you could start to see that he's calmer. He looks like a regular dog, you know, a regular golden there. Look at him home. He's feeling safer. Oh, and here, this is a funny one. Morgan, what didn't do well with other dogs? We knew that before we got him. So this is a friend of ours with his puppy, Cody. And we went up to a preserve to do some playing around. But we were really cautious. We were afraid that something would happen and we didn't want, you know, trouble. So Cody's dad is holding him and you can see, look at Morgan's tongue. It's sticking out. So, you know, this tells us that he's still a little wild. They don't usually have tongues sticking out. So here we are again. This is Cody and Morgan. Cody liked to make Morgan jealous. So that's what he's doing here. He's licking me and he's trying to instigate trouble. And this is another one. We went to the coffee shop and they would rumble in the grass and then the two of them sat here. They were best friends. And it really helped us that Morgan had a best friend. And also another thing, look at Morgan. Look at this fur. Look at how beautiful. We call this the Farrah Fawcett fur. And, you know, one thing when you rescue a dog, you don't really know the background. We didn't know what Morgan was going to look like when we got him. We didn't see the parents. So look, he's just gorgeous. We had people that would come over and tell us, you know, that dog comes from a good line. There we are again. This is Palm Springs. We like to hike. And there the two of them. They're just best friends. Now, here's a funny one. This is in New Hampshire. This is my niece. She's now 16. And this is the first meeting of the two of them. So Morgan's a puppy. And Casey is I don't know how old that would be, but we put her, my brother, that's my brother, he put her in the bag to protect her from Morgan. All right, here we go. This is Morgan. Now we have a tradition. We help animal shelters. That's what we like to do, and that's what we're doing with this book. In Palm Springs, we raised $1,000 for their animal shelter. And what we did is those are all the toys that Morgan never played with. So we brought them down to the animal shelter and donated them to some dog that didn't have any toys. And so that's how we started. You know, it's funny. Morgan thinks, oh, yeah, then you can have these toys. I'm going to get new ones anyways. All right, so this is Morgan. This was my Pinterest post, one of my first Pinterest posts. And somebody, this is the front page of a newspaper in Florida called Boomers of America. And they found this and put put Morgan on the cover of their magazine. And this is my first Facebook post. And we knew that I knew that I was gonna start writing this book, Rescuing Morgan. And this will be the first Facebook post. That's how I sell my books, with Facebook. And this is the start. And you can see, I mean, he just knew. It's like he knew how to look kind of somber. This is in our backyard, by the way. All right, holidays are one of the big events in our house. This is obviously the pilgrim. And you can see, okay, so you see the tongue straight out, not off to the side like a crazed animal. Of course, this is a crazed animal. This is his first Christmas, and this is at our house. And we, someone had a friend who dressed up as Santa, and they brought him home, brought him over, and you can see, he's grabbing Morgan by the neck to keep him calm. And you can see the eyes and the tongue slanted. And, all right, here we are, this is St. Patrick's Day. I call this one the Bowery Boys. This is in San Francisco. And here's another one. I mean, look, he loves to dress up. And I think why he lets us do it is because afterwards he learned that there's always a hike, that there's always a swim, that there's always some kind of reward that he's gonna get. And here he is. This is at an LA museum. Tongue straight out. July 4th at Golden Gate Park. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge up there in the corner. There's a dog beach here, so, you know, as soon as that was done, swim time. There's another one. This is, I mean, I think he's gorgeous here. I mean, this one just warms my heart. All right, here's another Easter one. Halloween. This one's great. I love this one. So, you know, we were always afraid of where we, you know, letting people around Morgan. But this is the Festival of Lights parade in Palm Springs. And you could see that they're just thrilled. They're just tickled to have Morgan in with them and a picture taken. This is at the top of the mountain in Palm Springs on some big snowy day. A little goofy shot. This is his first Christmas card. Oh, this is right here. This is on Main Street in Hyannis. There's a shop there that had this sort of this platform with the shark up there, and I thought it would be funny to have Morgan stand in front of him. And people seem to see, you know, half the people love it, half the people, oh, don't let them near the shark. This is one of my favorite. This was in Quincy. We were visiting my family. And again, just look at this fur. Look at how beautiful. I mean, again, Farrah Fawcett fur. This is, we came upon some antique fire trucks in San Francisco, and the manager let us take some pictures with Morgan in the truck. So we have a few of these. There's one. That one's beautiful. This is the Sonoma County coastline. Someone decided the seagull was more important than looking at the camera. This is over on Craigville Beach. This is in Provincetown. This is my birthday picture. And it's also on the back cover of the first book. Morgan just let us do anything. He just loved being the attention. And like I said, it always ends up in the water or on a mountain. These are my nieces. This is over in Craigville Beach or Long Beach, someplace over in that area. That's Casey, the one that was in the bag. You could see, she's, I don't know how old she is now, 12 or so, 10. This is Morgan's birthday. We always had birthdays. We always made a big thing out of it. And this is again in Provincetown. And that's Morgan right there in the middle. Well, my Facebook fans love to see Morgan in flowers. So this has been a preserve outside of Palm Springs in the spring. And though that's sage, the flower or the brittle bush it's called. It's really spectacular. Again, this is still my screensaver. There's some more, this one, nasturtium in Beverly Hills and dahlias in San Francisco. Now, the joke here is that we found the rare and elusive golden dahlia here. So try to, make it a little joke. But it does look like he's there. And he is a flower, he's a beautiful, beautiful dog. This is over at Long Beach, right down the street. This is in the fall. And I love the way the sun shines in the fall. It kind of just shivers, shimmers. Morgan was so well behaved that we were able to just get on cable cars in San Francisco. And this one is just on the beach. I like the way his ears are. I think this is maybe a duplicate, but it's the same Long Beach. This is Craigville Beach. Swimming was one of his favorite pastimes. Again, Craigville Beach. Another birthday. This is Craigville Beach, early one morning. This is his birthday. His gotcha day is August 16th. And so we're always something elaborate. And he just went with it. I mean, look at that. It's really kind of funny. This was Cowell Beach, actually, the private side of Craigville Beach. Waiting for the opera to begin. This is, they have in San Francisco, opera at the ballpark. And we're waiting in line for the doors to open. Morgan's favorite opera. Here we are. You can see in San Francisco, we're all dressed. Look at it, it's like winter time. Look at, I have a coat and a sweatshirt and a hat. Because summer in San Francisco is cold, especially at night. And here, this is the crowd. This is what it looks like. And he's just sitting there as though he, belongs with everybody else. I got to tell a funny little story. Okay, here we are at the opera, and I wandered around with him a little bit, and he starts jumping up on me at one point, and I think, oh my God, they're going to kick us out. And then the monitor, I don't know what they're called, but she comes over to me and she goes, "Your dog is so well behaved." And here he is in this crowd, and he's just loving it. Okay, here's this is in the Redwood Grove up in Northern California. And we now call this the Morgan tree because he could go inside. Sometimes when lightning hits the trees, they get stronger. The outer parts get stronger to support the hole in the middle. So It's the Morgan tree, and big boy over there, we were there recently this last winter, he couldn't fit down there. He was too big, he just didn't want to do it, so it's now known as the Morgan tree. His loyalty. His loyalty, he, okay, here's the baseball team. Here's a little silly side to him. Oh, all right, this is one of my favorites. Okay, so look at him, he's so totally relaxed. He's just so trusting. His paws, and this is in Provincetown. This was for my birthday, this ended up being my birthday card. And, it just tells you how far he has come from scared, aggressive. Morgan lived to be 14 and a half. And when he got to be about 12, his legs stopped working, which is one of the weak spots for golden retrievers, their back legs and their backs. And so Morgan couldn't walk anymore. And we had to decide what we wanted to do. And after talking with some friends, they said, get a wagon. So we got a Red Flyer wagon. And this was just before COVID also, just before COVID hit. So we would haul them around. Everything else was closed. We lived on the golf course at this point in time. The golf course was closed. So we were able to haul him around the golf course. And people would lean over their patios and out their doors and say, hello, Morgan, are you enjoying your walk? It really made their day. They got to see Morgan, and sometimes Morgan would bark, a greeting. And so he lived another year and a half. He made it back here. And here he is. He was beautiful. So now what I would like to do, how about if I read a chapter? All right, this one's called His Ocean Beach Story. At the end of April, we packed the truck and steered north. Oh, let me tell you, I read this. I was chosen to do a book reading for the Provincetown Book Festival last fall. And so they picked me as one of 65 out of 65 writers to read from my book. And so this is the chapter that I read, and I want to read it for you. At the end of April, we packed the truck and steered north. Another film produced by James, Kim Jong-il, about the children's concentration camps in North Korea was in the San Francisco International Film Festival. James and I made a 9-hour trip twice before with Willie. This would be the first one with Morgan. The weather called for showers off and on all weekend, which was welcome news. Living in the desert, we missed the rain, even in the winter. Average rainfall is only 5 inches in a year. In April, a scant 0.008 inches is normal. Gloriously, the weather was stormy when we awoke the first morning in San Francisco. We reached the beach at noon to find a deserted paradise. Empty except for seabirds and surfers. We trudged through the sand down to the shore. I commanded Morgan to sit. And then, as if checking both ways before crossing a busy stream, I scanned the beach one more time before letting him loose. There was no one in sight. Morgan dashed out into the surf. He hopped and bounced from side to side. I threw a tennis ball out into the water, and he leaped out above the surf to find it. Then he eyed a seagull gliding just above the waves. He galloped after the bird full speed ahead, like a thoroughbred. I marveled at his swiftness and agility. He was breathtaking, a thing of beauty. The gulf flew farther along, always remaining above the water until he angled out into the surf. Morgan was relentless and prolonged his pursuit until the water became deep enough to impede his progress, and he halted. After a moment, he turned and stared at us, as if wondering, what now? I beckoned him back to shore, but he didn't respond. He remained gazing out into the ocean. We didn't see anything except a lone surfer sloshing out behind his board. Morgan tore out, hurtling over the incoming waves. James wasn't sure what our boy was doing, and I pointed. He's going out after that surfer. This isn't good, James declared. Morgan, Morgan, we both shouted. The surfer paddled farther out. A whitecap washed over our dog, and he pierced right through it. Morgan no longer was fearful of the ocean or the waves, like he was back in September. We were back in September when we first went to the beach in Malibu. James and I both yelled frantically for him to come back, as he was now up to his chest. Luckily, the surfer figured out what Morgan was doing and caught the next wave into shore. Morgan accompanied him in, and I waved a thank you. Our dog bounded up out of the ocean and strolled over to us. He was soaked, and water dripped from his fur, giving him that seal-like quality for which Goldens are famous. I hadn't seen Morgan look like this before. Just then, a flock of small shore birds swung by overhead, and Morgan was off again, sprinting into the water. The birds flew on with Morgan tailing. After about a half hour, the rain fell harder. Time for us to head back. I spied Morgan ahead of us on the beach, sniffing at something in the sand. I hope he doesn't get into anything, I said, thinking a clump of seaweed or a dead bird. Then I perceived whatever he was occupied with stir. Oh no, that's an animal. I sprinted to Morgan as fast as I could and coerced him away. There in the sand was a small harbor seal. He appeared sick. Upon closer inspection, I noticed he had an open wound on his side, as if he'd been shot. The poor animal had closed his eyes. We can't leave him like this. We need to contact the Marine Mammal Center, I hollered to James, a few yards behind me. I had visited the center in Marin once before. I dialed the number and reported the situation. A volunteer informed me someone would be there within 30 minutes. We waited a safe distance from the injured seal. Soon, a guy dragging a large kennel and a butterfly net emerged on the beach. We pointed him to the animal. He draped the net over and around the seal and then coaxed the pup into the kennel. Once he had the animal safely secured, we helped haul the crate up the sand and into the back of its truck. James wondered if the poor guy would be all right. The volunteer disclosed to us that this was the third we've rescued in a week. The others are recovering, so he should too. He added, good thing you found him and called, as he might have been there all day and night in weather like this. Then he asked, what do you want to name the seal? Since you found him, you get to name him. Well, actually, our dog found him. We were way over there, I answered, pointing. I thought for a moment, then declared, let's name him Morgan. He rescued him. The volunteer patted Morgan on the head and told him, good job. Before Morgan, I had always hoped to rescue an injured animal like a seal. In reality, what are the chances of this occurring? Unmistakably, our lives with this crazy misfit would never become dull. Our very own Jekyll and Hyde Golden, our modern day pterodactyl. I never imagined that our wild boy Morgan would make it come true. Our rescued boy was now a rescuer. I kept my hero on a leash as we shuffled through the wet sand away from the rescue site, just in case he had any crazy thoughts of returning to the spot. The rain continued falling, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. Ocean Beach. I couldn't believe I was here once again with my dog. It felt like I'd grown up here. I was 19 when I first moved to San Francisco. I spent many years coming out here with my previous two Goldens. We had so many adventures, from one end of the beach to the other. I chuckled when I realized Morgan now had his own Ocean Beach story to tell. So, my life with Morgan may have begun with a rocky start. Throughout his life, Morgan taught me so many things. First and foremost, he taught me how to be more patient. An abused dog takes time to learn the basic socialization skills. I had a refresher course in compassion. My heart reached out to him each time I thought about the abuse that he endured before coming into my life. There was a constant forgiveness for his mistakes and for mine, trusting that we were both doing the best we could. Rescuing Morgan is a love story. It's a celebration of his life. At turns compassionate, insightful, and hilarious, Rescuing Morgan shows how love ultimately triumphs over trauma and how grief can strengthen, not break the heart. Any questions? Yeah. Anyone?
Did you keep notes?
Was that?
Did you keep notes on all his adventures?
Actually, we laugh. Facebook does that for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of the adventures are in the book, but we've laughed that Facebook tells us what we've done. We can go back 5 years and we see where we were, what we've done, who we were with. And I use that a lot when I'm writing. And same with Franklin's book. He uses it a lot too, when he has to write about some scenes. All done, everybody? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. Yeah, you made my day.